Happy Thursday, everyone. Thanks for joining me on Office Hours Live. Today is our big monthly resume review episode. We have got 5 resumes queued up for us tonight. We're going deep, y'all. So I've got my hair pulled back like I'm ready to go. So this is going to be awesome. We've got a lot to go through. I have a ton of notes and I'm just about to bring them up because I forgot to do that earlier. So while we're at it, let me know where in the world you guys are tuning in from. Love to hear where everybody is coming in from around the world. Office Hours does have a global audience. And so I really get excited when I hear and see people tuning in from different parts of the globe. So please do let me know in the chat where you are tuning in from. And yeah, if you have any questions throughout this review episode, please do pop them in the chat. We will definitely get to them. And I should stop multitasking and take a moment to actually bring up my notes. There we go. Okay. So yeah, this is a big night. We have 5 resumes, so that is a lot. We're probably going to go over. So if you need to revisit this recording during the replay, absolutely, please make sure you do. The links will be active on YouTube. It's best viewable on YouTube or on LinkedIn, whatever is your fancy, whatever you prefer. So yeah, let me know where you're tuning in from, and that would be awesome. Hello, Adolfo. Is this segment inspired by the roast of Michael Scott? Yes, it is. Thank you very much. I tried to be nicer than his colleagues. I don't want anybody the next day taking a mental health day because of my resume critique. I hope people leave this feeling positive. So anyway, yes, you got me. It is inspired by the roast of Michael Scott. So without further ado, let's dive into the resumes. And while we're doing that, please do pop into the chat. Let me know what your questions are, where you're tuning in from. I would love to hear. Hi, Wendy. Thanks for joining. All right. So let's bring up the first resume. All right. Let's see here. Okay. So and I'm just going to make sure that you guys can see it. Looks like we can, and I am going to zoom in a bit because this is pretty small. Okay, so the first resume that we're going to get into is a resume for a professional who is going more so from a education role in education, and I believe an element of compliance, and moving more in towards change management. Now, one theme of tonight's resume reviews that you're going to pick up on, and you may hear me repeating a lot, is make it make sense. So we have, especially when we are transitioning careers, we have to make it make our career, our previous career, the accomplishments that we've already accumulated along the way, we got to make it make sense to our target employer in our target job. We need to show how our skills are transferable, because they are transferable. We need to show how they are and make sure that our future employer can envision us in the role for which we're applying. So again, make it make sense. You're going to hear that a lot tonight. So first, let's go over the structure of this resume. And I can't see the chat right now, but I will get back to it. So please do enter any questions or any thoughts that you have in the chat or in the comments on LinkedIn. Okay, so first, let's look at the structure of this resume. I'm just going to scroll through a little bit. Overall, the structure of this resume is mostly fine. This is adhering to typical resume standards, what we would expect. What I do notice as I scroll through is there is an overuse of bullets. So we want to try and change up the way we display text in the resume to give the eye a bit of a break on the bullets. And as we know, with an overabundance of bullets, which I like to call bullet barf, when we have too many bullets, important information isn't standing out. Bullets are really to be used to make important information jump off the page for the reader. And so when we're using all bullets, nothing jumps off the page to the reader. It's like highlighting an entire page of a textbook. So let's take a look at the contact information on this resume. We want to make sure that you're hyperlinking your email. I didn't see a link to your LinkedIn profile. You might want to include that as well, your LinkedIn profile URL, and make sure that's hyperlinked too. I'm not sure that I would include the fully work authorized, no visa sponsorship required anymore, because you are now established in the country that you relocated to not long ago. So it would be presumed that you have, in most cases, the ability to work legally. But you can keep it there. This is not a make or break, but I would probably go more so with the official title for what your status is. So in Canada, it would be like PR, permanent resident status. So whatever you have would probably fit better than no visa sponsorship required. Rather state what you have. Okay, so in the professional summary section, so with this job seeker, I did engage a little bit back and forth prior to tonight. We chatted a bit about the summary section, and you do want this paragraph to emphasize more the strengths that you'll be bringing to change management from your earlier work, or what might seem like unrelated work, but we're going to get to that. When we are writing our professional profile paragraphs, what we really want to aim to do is really speak about ourselves in an individual way, the aspects of ourselves and our strengths that make us unique. So when I see a line that says reputation as a resourceful go-to person with excellent relationship management and problem-solving skills, this isn't telling the reader much about what you do, or the type of person or professional that you are. It's written in such a way that I think you wrote it so you were giving the reader what you think they want, but what they want to hear more of is more about you as a unique individual. So what we want to go for in our professional summary, the formula I like to recommend is to open with the type of professional that you are, plus the main solution that you create, so that the reader can see that you satisfy and fulfill their business need for having the role open in the first place right out of the gate. So that first sentence is really important. So you would speak to how maybe you are a training and facilitation specialist turned change management specialist or change management manager, known for or ready to bring experience in Big Four consulting, let's say, to whatever type of target employer in order to provide a particular solution in change management. So I would take another run at that paragraph. Let's take a look at your skills section. So with our skills section, what we really want to go for here are skills, like stating the skill and not description of the skill or how you apply the skill. So how you apply the skill and demonstrate the skill, that's done by the accomplishment bullets below in your professional experience section. Those reinforce the skills that you're claiming here as being skills that you actually have because you've demonstrated them in your work. So the skills that I would expect to see here that I'm not seeing here might be things like change management, because we know you're going for a change management role. Project management, you do have that. And so again, we're just stating the skill name themselves. So project management rather than multiple project management from consulting firm background. We don't need all that preamble, just project management as a skill. Stakeholder engagement rather than bring stakeholders of different areas on board to adopt new processes. This might actually be a good statement to move into your profile paragraph. And then KPIs, we don't need to say that we use KPIs and assessment tools designed for organizational optimization, just say KPIs. So you're just stating the skills themselves, and then the professional experience is where you're going to back them up. One thing I forgot to mention here is ideally at the top of the page, you would also include a title for your resume. So the title would preferably be the title to the job for which you're applying. So let's say it's Change Management Manager. And that really primes the reader for how they should be interpreting your resume. So they know, okay, I should be reading this resume as though it's for someone who's pursuing a change management manager role. So try and insert a title there as well. Okay, let's talk about your professional experience. Okay, so structurally, when I go and look at your dates, I can see that you use quite a few like you hit the space bar many times to align the date on the right-hand margin. That's a lot of work. And you did a good job though. It looks like it's totally consistent in most places, but we want to make it easier for ourselves. I do have a video on my YouTube channel that shows you how to align dates on the right-hand margin. So I would recommend checking that out so you don't have to do the space several times. And it will make sure that your formatting is consistent every time. All right, so as we've already addressed, there's just too many bullets overall. What I recommend for professional experience sections for each role is to include a small paragraph that gives context to the role, your responsibilities, and then use bullets to highlight really great, like your best accomplishments and select accomplishments. We're not sharing everything. Okay, let's see here. Okay, I noticed that you've italicized information about your employers. I would recommend moving away from that. Your resume is a document that is marketing and branding you. So I want you to spend more space talking about you and your role within those companies. So that's where that small paragraph comes in, so it can give context to your actual role. Okay, so the challenge that we've got here as we're going through your resume is that you somewhat recently immigrated to where you are now, or relocated at least to where you are now, and that you have some work that is not directly related with change management. So those are probably a few of our challenges. Having recently relocated, it's creating some career gaps, which do need to be addressed. That's why I have them in red here. Where you do have a career gap that isn't filled by a bridge job or a job that you feel is unrelated, you'll want to clarify how you've been spending the time other than job searching. So, so if this was when you relocated, let's say, or if you relocated down here, you could just put a quick note in there that says relocated from place to place, just to give an idea of what you were doing and how you're spending the time. And I have a lot of videos about how to address career gaps on my YouTube channel as well. Okay, so this role here and a few of the other teaching roles, they may seem unrelated, but I think we can make them related. And the way I think you can reframe these teaching roles from a change management perspective is to really tell the reader how you coach your students to embrace change, whether it be a language change or a culture change or a change to how they learn. I think that you can really run with that story as being someone who's a champion for change within the learning experience, learning environment. And that can tie everything into this change management narrative that we're going for here. So that would be my recommendation for these teaching roles, which might worry you as being unrelated. Let's talk about this next role here, this compliance specialist role. So what is CTPAT? I'm not sure what it means. What I would recommend is spelling out the first instance of this acronym, and then you can use it freely throughout the rest of your resume. We got to be careful with acronyms because not everybody knows all acronyms, especially if they're technical or jargon. We need to be careful and establish the acronym at its first use in our resume, so that the reader knows what you're actually talking about later on. Okay, so let's see. So when we're writing about this job, we want to reframe it from a place of change. So we're, again, bringing it back to that change management skill, change management direction. So what do I mean? Let's take a look at one of these bullets here. So we've got designed and delivered live and virtual instructor-led trainings for 150 plus corporate warehouse and store employees, both in English and Spanish, to ensure they were equipped with skills necessary to support organization's overall strategy on a yearly and per need basis. Okay, so this is a long bullet. First of all, I really recommend that you trim it down to taking up 2 lines, not 3. And when you are rewriting this bullet, I'd like you to think about what change were you driving with this new training? What was the result of the change? So really coming at it from a place of change. Looking at the next bullet here, developed, implemented, and managed first ever onboarding due diligence program for 150 plus international vendors, including SOP creation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so how did you drive this change? Who had to change? How did you help them change? Bring in more thoughts, results, outcomes, approaches around change. Next bullet, successfully assess performance gaps through post-training data evaluation. Okay, so what change resulted from this? So again, bringing this all back to change. So we got to make this make sense from a change management perspective, because that's where we're headed, right? Okay, so let's take a look here. All right, global trade consultant. Okay, so global trade consultant. So what did you help your clients change? So this is, again, bringing it all back to change. What were your change recommendations? And what were the results of or outcomes that you forecasted from your recommended change to your clients? So again, bringing it all back to change. All right, so let's go on to rental coordinator. So what supply or demand gaps did you resolve? What change did you affect in solving supply and demand gaps? And did you change anything from a procedural standpoint? Okay. And that is really what I wanted to recommend there. And I'm just going to hop into the chat and check out what questions are coming up here. Okay, people checking in from around the world. So hello, Bethany from South Carolina. Hello, LinkedIn user in Georgia. Hello, Amit in India, and Chris in South Carolina. Thanks everyone for joining. All right, so that was a lot of information for this resume. This was our first one. I'm going to hydrate actively because I'm talking a lot. All right. Please do get your questions in the chat if you have any, or in the comments on LinkedIn. Happy to answer them. These approaches that I am recommending, while they're specific to the client, to the resume holders, the resume owners, they are universal concepts. The whole like making it make sense. Everybody needs to make sure that they're doing that with their resume. So yeah, if you have any questions, even if you're not in the same profession, please make sure that you ask them. I'm happy to help. That's what I'm here for. And hello, Thee from Sydney, and LinkedIn user, sorry, there's a privacy setting, and so I can't see your name. I apologize. LinkedIn user from New Jersey, and Jayesh from Illinois. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. All right, so let's stop this share, and we're going to go over to our next resume. All right. Okay, so this was a fun one as well. These are all fun. Let me just make sure you can see it. Yes, you can. I'm going to zoom in. So this is not a profession that I come across very frequently. So it was definitely very interesting for me. So this professional is targeting flight operations or flight dynamics. And they have a background in, I believe it's theater, coaching theater, as well as design of scenes in theaters. So very interesting transition here. So let's dive into this. All right. So first, let's look at the structure here. So structurally, there's one glaring issue here for me, and this is where I am seeing this the most is in this areas of expertise section, which is a huge section. And basically what is happening here is this is causing this resume to skew more towards a functional style resume. Functional style resumes are difficult to read and get important information from quickly. And so we're really basically getting in the way of the reader getting the important information fast when we give them all this extra areas of expertise. This is all stuff that should be backed up by our experience and our accomplishments. So we really don't need this section so long as we are talking about it in the actual experience. So we want to move away from this functional resume look and feel by getting rid of or transplanting important information from that areas of expertise into the experience section. Let's see here. I think that you'll probably want to move on to a 2-page resume once you do shuffle some things around. You will stay on a 2-page resume is what I mean. And with dates, I want to see your dates all the way on the right-hand side. That will really help kind of give a little bit more white space here as well. Okay, so let's take a look at your contact information. So we need a location here. If you are planning to relocate, you can note that too, but we don't want to completely forego a location. So city, state, city, province, city, country, we need that there. With your email, you need to hyperlink it. And with your LinkedIn, you need to hyperlink that as well. And we need a title for your resume. So if it's like flight operations analyst or flight dynamics analyst or flight dynamics engineer, I'm not sure what specific role title you're targeting, but we do need a title either at the top or near the top for this resume. Okay, so with our skills section, I'd recommend moving it out of a table. Tables are just kind of, yeah, I shouldn't have touched that. Tables are just kind of funky. I have 2 different videos on my YouTube channel about how to make skill columns, if you prefer the column look, or how to, like, the easiest way to format your skills. It's super, super easy. So check out both, see which one works better for you. And then I would recommend going with that option. You don't need to bullet your skills either. You can just name the skills without bullets. Let's see here. What else did I want to say about skills? I also want you to make sure that you're including skills that are required or desired, or you expect would be required or desired by your target job. There seems to be like a lot of skills here, and I'm not sure that they all are necessary given where you're headed, but I could be wrong. So just make sure that they align with your job postings and that you can back them up in your experience. All right. And I would not necessarily use skills like creative thinking, problem solving, communication, critical thinking, because those are all kind of expected. You're expected to bring those to the table. And for analytical skills, I would change it to analysis or specify the type of analysis that you're doing. With communication, maybe specify the type of communication. So is it technical report writing? Is it presentations, public speaking? Just specify that. Okay, let's take a look at your education is fine, by the way. Let's take a look at your experience section, because this is where the most changing will need to happen. So again, as I mentioned, try and transplant any accomplishments that you have in your areas of expertise into your experience section. Consolidate those sections basically, and eliminate any redundancies or repetition of any bullets or accomplishments. Okay, so for this owner-operator role, so this is where tonight's theme is coming in. We got to make this make sense. So a lot of times when you're applying to a job, the first line reviewer of your resume is going to have some technical understanding, but not like the technical understanding or technical knowledge as the person that you would be working for or with. So we need to try and move away from a lot of jargon. So there's some information here that I'm lost on. So operated 1 FDM and 3 SLA 3D printers. I'm not sure what that means. And so if I don't know what it means, it's possible that the frontline resume reviewer, the recruiter or the talent acquisition professional won't know what that means either. So we need to make this make sense. We need to translate this basically so that it makes sense towards your direction of flight operations or flight dynamics. So the best way to kind of translate this and make this make sense is to explain to the reader how or what these printers enable. So it's okay. So you operate them, but what are they enabling? And you say you're an owner of this of your business. Who are you serving? Who are your clients? And when we keep looking at your bullets there, you mentioned that you increased revenue and you managed and processed certain numbers of sales. Is that important information to share if you're aiming for a flight operations or flight dynamics position? Are you going to be going towards a more sales focused position? If not, if it's going to be more engineering or more technically focused, then you want to make sure that the bullets that you're sharing here are more technical and showcase more so the technical and transferable technical skills that you would bring to flight operations or flight dynamics. Okay, for theater coach, again, we need to make this make sense. I think you were on the right track though, when I read your bullets here. So automation, you have in here, automation sounds like it might relate to flight operations or flight dynamics. But how did you automate? What did you automate? And what was the outcome of this automation? So providing a little more information here would be helpful. Let's see here. You mentioned group projects, I think here. Yeah, group projects. So facilitating group projects might be a good example of showcasing how you could collaborate with stakeholders, other stakeholders, once you are in a flight operations or flight dynamics role. So maybe expand upon that. Let's take a look at freelance designer and technician. So in this section, I'd really emphasize the technical work because you're headed towards a technical job. Share more information about the virtual production and virtual streaming technology that you used and what it enabled specifically. So we know we're streaming something, but what are we streaming? Were they able to stream before you helped them stream and set up the solution or technology to enable them to stream? Was this a totally new thing for your clients or whomever you were helping, whichever theater you were helping? Let's see here. Blueprints was interesting. I think that can relate as well. So give the reader a better idea of what you were creating from blueprints, what you built from blueprints. And the programming show control systems was also interesting. So before you program show control systems, what was happening? Was it on the fly? When you program them, did this automate show control systems? Did it ensure greater accuracy? Did it ensure less human involvement? Like what was the outcome again? Okay, energy efficiency coordinator here. I couldn't quite understand what this role was, so we want to better communicate what the actual scope of the role was and your duties. What were the project revisions and deliverables? Maybe get more specific on that. And what could you share here in in other ways that can emphasize your transferable skills that you'll bring to flight operations and flight dynamics, I would give that some thought. Less about Salesforce. I don't think Salesforce is particularly important for where you're headed. More about project collaboration, technical aspects of that work is what I would encourage you to emphasize. Field energy consultant, say a bit more here. Maybe another bullet here, and talk about how you translated technical concepts into concepts that customers could understand. I think that would benefit you here. And then project engineer. Okay, so this is like your shining star. This is very important stuff. It is so important here that I would recommend that up in your professional profile paragraph here, I would recommend that you maybe take a few bullets from your project engineering work, maybe the best highlight and the best other technical highlights that you can think of throughout the rest of your experience, and bring it up to the top of your resume as like a career highlight sections. So maybe with 3 bullets of your best overall career accomplishments, with at least 1 being from project engineer, because this I see as being the most related to where you're headed. So a question that came up for me is, do you have an engineering designation? I was curious about that. Yeah, so we're going to bring up a highlight or 2. The goal with bringing up a highlight or 2 from this role is we just don't want it like lost on page 2. We want to highlight that experience right out of the gate if we can. And this is interesting and sounds super related, but I don't know anything about flight operations and dynamics. But what type of changes did you execute for turbine engine builds? So I would get a bit more specific there. Okay, so that is what I wanted to mention for this resume. All right, let's check in here. Okay, let's see. Right, Jayesh. So they're 3D printers, but what are you printing with them? So we need to make it make sense in the world of the reader being the target employer. So 3D printers, but what are we doing with them? All right. Let's see what this question is. How many years of experience do you list on your resume? Unfortunately, there's no easy answer to that. It can really depend. I don't like to instruct people to cut off at a certain period in time because it was 2007 and that's only 14 years ago. I worry that you could be cutting out relevant information. So it really depends. And I have a few videos that touch on dealing with older experience that's a ways in the past. I think it's my how to beat ageism video where I look at Creed Bratton from The Office and his situation. So take a look at that video. I think that will help you navigate sharing older work experience and how to share it in different ways. So take a look at that. Should each work experience be in bullets or can it be described in a paragraph in depth? So I would recommend, I forgot to mention it for this resume, but I would recommend small paragraphs for each role to give context to the role. And then a few bullets, like 3 to 5 bullets to highlight select accomplishments. Ideally, these select accomplishments would be quantifiable accomplishments, but if they aren't, at least they would emphasize a result or outcome. So that's what I would reserve the bullets for, and then use small paragraphs to give context to the role, like responsibilities and overall mandate. And so I would not use a large paragraph to describe a role in depth. Definitely not. Just give the reader the important aspects of the responsibilities of the role in the small paragraph. So when I say small paragraph, I'm meaning like 3 lines, and then followed up with 3 to 5 bullets of the best accomplishments that you have from that role. Good questions. All right. So let's stop this one and let's go into the next one. All right. So, okay. Let's make sure you guys can see this. And you can. I will zoom in. Okay. So this is for someone targeting fluid or thermal engineer roles. So first, let's talk about structure. Okay, overall, the structure is not ideal. So the reason it's not ideal is because there's just too much content in a small space. So I'm giving you permission, because you probably have been looking for it. You can go onto a 2-page resume. It's okay. If you really want to be sharing all of this information, you can go onto a 2-page resume. I would rather you on a 2-page resume than having the skinniest of margins and having text almost fall off the page. I realize that this might also be a, with the text almost falling off the page, this may be a translation between 2 different word processing software. So that's okay, but these are very tight margins here. We want to expand that a little bit. And we want to use a larger font. This is a 9-point font. That's teeny tiny. So I would rather see you at a minimum of a 10-point font. 11-point font is even better. But there's just too much text in a small space. Too many bullets. We really need to give the reader a bit of a break on the bullets, and really create a document that is conducive to reading and scanning quickly. Okay, so I would say that you definitely need to have an opening paragraph here, just like the previous resumes, a professional profile paragraph. So I would recommend throwing that in as well. Again, the formula that I recommend for that is to open it with the mains, like the type of professional you are and the main solution that you create as a fluid or a thermal engineer. Okay. Your contact information, I would recommend moving it out of the header. Again, this may be a translation issue between the 2 word processing software, but we don't want it in the header here. We want to move it into the body of the document, and we need a resume title. So fluid engineer or fluid and thermal engineer or thermal engineer, whatever the job title is to which you're applying. Okay, your education section. So listing relevant courses doesn't necessarily add much value. Depending on different schools, the course could be named something differently than what another school may name it. So relevant courses doesn't really add much strength to an education section of a resume. What I would recommend here instead is to consider bringing up or transplanting some of the projects that you have below up to the education, the degree in which you executed or completed those projects. All right, let's talk about the experience section here. I just wanted to say, if you are not targeting a research role, I don't think I would have a research section. So I know that you were doing research earlier, but if your engineer role isn't research, then I would consider changing this subtitle to project. Select projects, something like that. Or you could even just consolidate these 2 sections and just call it, instead of relevant, we don't need to say relevant. It's assumed if you're sharing it that it is relevant. So instead of saying relevant, you could just say experience here and then consolidate these 2 sections, or merge them, I should say. Okay, so when we are talking about our different work experience, let's lead with the role title first instead of the location, because this is a document about you, branding you, marketing you. So let's have the title that you held first, followed up by, not the location, followed up by the organization. I'm just going to undo that because that messed up the formatting a bit. Okay, so the accomplishments that you have listed here under this first role, they're on the right track. Though I would like to see you lead with the results rather than have it buried at the end of the bullet. So for this one, you helped secure a scientific grant. So I would move that up to the beginning of the bullet and say something like secured or facilitated the approval of a grant, or not facilitated the approval of a grant, but instrumental in securing a grant, but in the amount of whatever. And then you talk about how you got there. Same goes for the, there was a bullet about in situ. I'm trying to find it. There it is. Okay, so let's see here. So you mentioned reducing post-processing times. I would represent this in a percentage decrease instead of time, because it'll have more impact. The way you're representing it right now, people have to do math. So it's like 1 minute, okay, 1 minute is 60 seconds, and you decreased it to 10 to 20 seconds, okay? So once they're there, the impact is lost. So I would translate that into a percentage. I would take the average rather than a 1 to 3 minutes, 10 to 20 seconds, just take the average. That will make this a much simpler bullet. And again, lead with the time savings, put that at the front of the bullet. So saved or reduce post-processing times, however much percent at the front, and then by writing Fortran subroutines for in situ post-processing, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. All right. So let's get into the projects down here. So we want to make these projects make sense to your future employer. And we want them to show how they would have achieved solutions to maybe their problems that they're experiencing in their business. So with the proper nope, not going to try, decomposition of planner turbulence. So what did you uncover through your research? It's unclear to me. There is too much jargon. That's something that you were wondering about. So certainly there is too much. Let's simplify this. Let's make this make sense to a reader who might not have this level of technical understanding, which will be a lot of readers. So simplify it a bit. For the dispersed multi-phase turbulent flows in rectangular channels, what does 92% average correlation with the testing data set mean ultimately? Is this good? Is it bad? We need to help the reader understand it. If we're not contrasting it against anything, obviously 100% it would be what we're contrasting against, but what's kind of the expectation? Is 92% good? Because normally it would be 89%. Like we need to close the loop here with that result. Yeah, we need to make it make sense. Less jargon in that project as well. Analysis of rarefied gas dynamics. I'm not clear on what this was. So really, I would recommend rewriting this and reapproaching most of these projects from this is the ultimate solution that this research would have provided, rather than emphasizing the research itself. Emphasize what it would have provided or achieved for, say, a business that would have benefited from that research. For the RANDs and LES capabilities, you were asking about this, and you asked about how to properly show it on your resume, because you said that you started it in school and then continued on post-school, I think you said. So you could definitely move this project up to the schooling in which it happened or started. I think it was, I think it was this degree right here. So you could certainly shift it up, move it up. And you could also move up another or a few other of your projects to each of the degrees. Again, moving away from listing relevant courses, because it's not adding a lot of value, and more so having bullets that highlight some of these projects. So I would go one bullet per project. and that will help the reader understand how you've been applying the knowledge that you gained through your degrees. Okay, skills. Again, similar feedback to one of the prior resumes, move away from a table. Right now, this is just looking like a lot of tech skills. I'm glad you categorized them. That does help. But are you going to need to showcase all of these tech skills for every single job application? I would make sure that you're refining this list with every single application. The commas are certainly not necessary if you're using a tabled approach. But if you aren't using a tabled approach, if you're just going to have the categories and then list them one after the other, then the commas would remain. But yeah, move this out of a table structure if you could. All right, and publications. So unless you're going into a research role, it's really not necessary to have publications. If you want to keep it, I would just recommend not citing the publications as though you're writing a paper. So that's a very unapproachable way to reference publications that you've published, like you would in a paper or like you would the official way, because someone reading your resume probably hasn't written an essay in a while, and so they'd have to think back to like, well, what's listed first here. So I would lead with the title of the publication and then name yourself and whomever you co-authored it with. And also you could consider linking to the publication as well if it's published online. Okay, so that was a lot of information. Let's take a look at the questions. All right. Hey, Diana, good to see you. Thanks for joining. Thank you so much, Wendy. Thank you so much, Wendy, for your feedback. Thanks, everyone. So does anybody have any questions? Yes, good point. You're also a researcher. And they did have a Google Scholar at the top. So that's a really good point. Okay, so the publications don't even need to be stated in detail. Fantastic solution. That's great. So thank you for mentioning that. So excellent. Yeah, and I'm going to bring that back up. That's a particularly good point for this job seeker because it's unlikely that they are moving into a research-based role. I think this is kind of a carryover from when they were previously in a research role. In any case, I think your workaround is really, really great. Thank you for that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Thea. I really appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate everybody's input. Okay. All right. Any more questions, let me know. And I'm sorry, I think I had an internet issue. If there was anything that got missed or got garbled, please let me know and I will repeat myself. Okay, so let's get into the next one. Okay, we're moving along quite well. Okay. So we're going over to inventory and supply. Okay. Before we get into this one, just want to address this question. Jayesh, how do we write the parts that we initiated? Can you tell me a bit more about what you're asking there? What parts of which? Just let me know what you're specifically asking so I can best answer that. Okay, so let's get into this one and we'll come back to your follow-up, Jayesh. Okay, so we're looking at inventory and supply and we're zooming in. Okay, so inventory and supply chain manager, this individual is transitioning from military into private sector, I believe. Structurally, too much going on here. So these lines and circles kind of denote timeline. We don't need that. When your resume is chronological, we just don't need a symbol or any design that shows us it's chronological. We know. Or reverse chronological. We know it is. So I would really, really encourage you to delete these lines and delete these brackets. It's just too much, too distracting, not adding any value to your resume. So delete all those lines if you could. It's just not useful. Okay, contact information, no issues here. No problems there. You don't need these icons, but they're not make or breaking your resume. Okay, so your professional profile paragraph. So there's too many areas of focus noted here. Expertise in all of these things. So this is going to confuse the reader. We've got a title at the top saying inventory and supply chain manager, but then we're getting into HR, office admin, and organizational security. They're just gonna wonder, like, okay, what are we going for here? What role do you actually want to move into? So really make sure that the language you're using all throughout your resume is very focused towards your target direction, and it makes sense to your target direction. Okay, so let's see here. Again, when we're opening this paragraph, talk about the type of professional you are, so inventory and supply chain manager, and then the main solution you create as an inventory and supply chain manager, okay? Like, how will you help your future employer? What business solution will you provide? What business needs will you solve and fulfill? Okay, let's talk about the skills section here. So the kind of like button look here isn't really helping. Again, it's like the lines here, it's a bit distracting. So I would recommend moving away from the button look. And I think that these might be text boxes, which we know are not the greatest for applying online. It's going to create more work for you when you apply online, because it's just not going to pass into the application form properly. So I would recommend using one of my 2 methods of skill formats that I go through and teach on my YouTube channel. So the column way or the super easy way. Okay, so let's talk about your experience here. So overall, we want to make sure that you're addressing your gap, your work experience gap here. There are a few different ways to do that. Check out my video, my variety of videos on addressing career gaps to get an idea of how you might want to do that. All right. So title-wise, I think because this is coming from military into private sector, the titles aren't really making sense for me. I'm not sure what the kind of private sector translation would be for them, but I don't know what NCO means. I don't know what technical store in charge means. There's a variety of title confusion, like title things here that are confusing me. So you might want to reapproach these by translating the titles and giving using role titles that would make sense and resonate across industries, rather than how we have it right now, because I think it's going to really confuse readers and they're not going to know how you fit in their company. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at a few of these rules. So inventory management, NCO, and data analyst. So you coordinate issue of stores. Like, is that stores, like actual brick and mortar stores, or are we talking about storage? I think it's storage. So when we talk about that, how much were you storing? What exactly were you storing? You have vehicles and ammunition here. So what else were you storing? I'm not really understanding what ordnance echelons mean. So if you could translate that, that would be good. I would recommend that you do. In your bullets here, it sounds like you created procurement processes and guidelines. If that's true, what was the outcome of doing that? So we really want to make sure that we are emphasizing the results and outcome of our work. So make sure you talk about that. And did you manage teams in this role? If so, how many people and what did you manage them or mobilize them to do? A little more information would be good here. As well, similar to a few of the prior resumes, we want to have a small paragraph that gives a context to the actual role, and then using bullets to highlight accomplishments. So an accomplishment from here would be some notes about the outcome or results of creating the procurement guidelines or processes. That would be a good bullet. But coordinating issue of stores would be best in that small paragraph. Okay. All right. So going on to the next role again. So NCO, I'm not sure what that is. So you mentioned here high altitude remote area. Why is that important to note here? I'm not saying it's not, but only note that factor if it's important for the inventory management side of things and supply chain side of things. The second bullet here is very long. As mentioned for one of the previous resumes, we want to go for 2 lines per bullet. But with this bullet, what was the results of your work? We want to bring this full circle and help the reader understand what the results of that you achieved from that work. Where you say you saved 3 millions, what do you mean? $3 million, 3 million what? But more specifically, you said you achieved it by strict policy of budget expenditure for procurement. More specifically than strict controls, how did you save this money? Were you championing this adapted strict control of the budget? Was it your idea? Take credit for what you did. The 3 million is good, but really close the gap here and give the reader context for how you really did it. Okay, inventory management, again, administrative office in large. Okay, so this is where kind of the HR background comes in, I believe. So my recommendation here is you need to rework this role and how you describe it to better align with inventory and supply chain management. And I was thinking about how are we going to translate this? We're talking about people. And this is going to sound bad, but I think it's going to work. I would say, because we're talking about a huge number of workers here and that you were coordinating and managing a variety of different HR related functions and deliverables, I would almost treat or speak of the management of those deliverables and possibly coordinating these many different workers as kind of like how you would coordinate huge numbers of items of inventory as well. I know that sounds bad because people and things are totally different, but I see that as being translatable and transferable and would really help the reader make sense of how this HR type of role was inventory or supply chain related. So take another run at this. I think you can do it. Okay, so generally with the other rules, my feedback remains the same. Make it make sense for your target direction. Your education section is fine, although the formatting's a bit funky. Could be the translation between our 2 different software. Yeah, overall, how you've approached the education is fine, but we want to clean up the format, get rid of the extra lines. I'm not sure what happened here. We don't even need these lines. Well, I screwed that up, but we don't even need these lines either. So I would get rid of those too, because they're just muddling things up. But yeah, so those are my recommendations for your resume. So let's hop back over to the chat, see what questions we got here. Okay. I'm going to stop the screen share. Okay, Jesh, follow up. So some parts of a research project that weren't as a part of the brief itself, but say someone came up with the idea to complete a particular task and then followed it up with completion and publication. What's the best way to write that? Okay, so that's what you're meaning by, or asking about initiated. So I truly would say that you initiated whatever, or that you conceptualized whatever, or that like if there was something in a research project where it's like, you were the only one who identified, say, a gap in the research project, and you had to fight really hard to get your colleagues to see that there was a gap and that you should address it, you could say that you advocated for this certain aspect of the research project. And then you need to bring that full circle and tell the reader why that was important, like why that was significant. So you advocated for it, or you championed it, or you initiated it, or you conceptualized it. And so what was the outcome of doing that? What was the result of that, of working hard to initiate that or champion that? So make sure that you complete the whole idea by telling the reader about the results of doing that. Okay. All right, Wendy, if your resume does spill onto 2 pages and as your guidance pulls names out of a header, then should a person repeat their name into page 2 or have some secondary references? Okay, so the name in the header, that could have been the person who owned that resume was using a totally different word processing software than I'm using. So it could have just been a translation thing. But so if you are building your resume and you're noticing that you're spilling onto a second page or a third page, there are a few different tricks that you can use to get your resume to sit properly on that 1 page or on 2 pages. Moving content into a header or footer is not going to save you much space at all. So I wouldn't even bother. So you can reduce the margins down to, say, a 1.5 centimeter. You can reduce the white space in between certain sections of your resume. But if you are thinking back to that resume where text was spilling, as you saw, it was really jam-packed with content. We don't want to just jam a ton of content into our resumes just to keep it on 1 page. We're far better off moving on to 2 pages, giving ourselves the space, the air to breathe, and giving the reader a break from the just sheer amount of mountains of text. So just go ahead and use a 2-page if you want. That's totally okay. Yeah, you can. I would just really recommend that you're not forcing yourself onto 1 page, that you are comfortably sitting on 1 page, and that if you need to rejig a few things, you can do what I'm mentioning: reduce the margins down to 1.5 centimeters, trim a bit of the white space in between the lines, like reducing the actual size of the font the size of the white space, what the font would be within it. So like if you're using a 12-point font to write your text in your resume, then the line of white space in between some of the sections could, say, be brought down to a 6. We're not bringing the text itself down to a 6. We're just bringing the height of the white down to a 6. So that could help a bit. But moving information into headers and footers is not going to help save space. But if you are moving on to a 2-page resume and you do want to make sure that your name is on that 2-page resume, on the second page, I should say, then you can only, in that case, second, third, fourth pages, put your name in the header there, because it doesn't matter at that point that your name shows up in the body of the resume, because you've already established it at the top of the resume. But yes, on second, third, fourth, and so on pages, you can use the header footer section of your resume. Okay, hope that helps. That was a lot of information. Okay, last resume. Okay, at the top here, let's see. So we have first name, last name, perfect. City, state, phone, email, which was hyperlinked, perfect, but no LinkedIn URL. So just wondering where that is. Okay, so professional profile paragraph. All right, so we've got 2 different narratives going on here. We've got operations and customer service. So this is a little confusing. So what's the main solution that you, sorry, I need to back up. So we've got operations and customer service, which is confusing for the reader because they're wondering, well, we've got at the top here, operations analyst. Do you want to go after operations or do you want to go after customer service? So that can be a little confusing for the reader. So when we're opening up this profile paragraph, again, we want to go for what's the main solution that you're creating as an operations analyst? Like, what do you help the business do? What do you help them fulfill? So that's kind of unclear in this paragraph. We want to move this away from customer service specifically and more towards operations because that's what you're applying for. If you're going for a customer service role, then we would want to change this over to be more geared towards customer service. Okay, so looking at the areas of expertise or the skills, we're on the right track here. I'm wondering, do all of these skills apply to an operations analyst role? We want to make sure that you're listing skills that are asked for or would be required or desired as per the job posting, or that you're anticipating would be required or desired. Okay. All right. So workload and on-site equipment coordinator. So the description here sounds quite targeted towards your direction of operations analyst because we've got analyzing data here, which is great to see. That is a component of an operations analyst role. The role title's a touch confusing. I wonder if you can clarify a little more around the scope of this role. I think what you're getting at is that I think this role is providing equipment and technology to people within the organization, right? So maybe clarifying that a bit more, writing about that a bit more, the scope of the actual role will help. Okay, so let's see here. So you were recognized for mentoring new hires. How exactly were you recognized? Did you win an award? Was this commendation from leadership? Let's get a little specific here. Let's see here. You had something about tabulating. Yeah, tabulating building the computer tabulating process. Did you build the computer tabulating process? How much equipment are we talking about here? Give some scope to the work that you did. What does it mean to say staged cubicles throughout the call center to expedite the check-in, check-out process? Not sure what that means, staged cubicles. But with this process that you built here, how fast did you make it? How slow was it before the check-in, check-out process? I'm curious to hear. Okay. So let's see here. And the 100 employees, where were they located in the world? Were they widely dispersed? Are they in a regional or local location? If they're dispersed, that would be a great detail to add to this bullet as well. Okay, so let's talk about the chat specialist. So what recurring problems or critical problems did you identify in this role? You mentioned, I believe here, that you identified and reported critical or reoccurring customer service issues to supervisors. So what exactly did you identify and resolve? What loss or risk did you prevent by resolving issues? Or how much did you boost customer satisfaction? That would be a great detail to add in here to quantify these accomplishments. Okay, so let's talk about lead customer service consultant. So I noticed that this is only a couple months, which is shorter than this role. But it's taking up like quite a bit more real estate here. So I would recommend that you maybe consider shortening this a bit so that it doesn't look imbalanced. All right here. Okay, if this was a role for if this was a resume for a customer service role, then how you've approached this would be fine. But it's not. Like, you're going after operations analyst. So We need to make it sound a little bit more that way, targeted towards that direction. Also we needed some clarity here. So seasonal events, what are those? What does that mean? Let's see here. What are operations for new hires exactly? I'm not sure what that means. So maybe clarifying that. And you receive commendations for consistently achieving service rate in the top 10 percentile. So what was the commendation? Who gave you the commendation? Were you rewarded with or awarded something? And you implemented new company policies in partnership with training facilitators, resolving 95% of customer challenges. So what new policies were they? How many challenges were getting solved beforehand? So you can contrast this 95% and show the actual increase in the resolution of customer challenges. Okay, let's go down to customer assurance specialist. So what does it mean to manage the workload for a department of 30? Were you leading and coordinating a team? Let's give some more context and scope here. Yeah, I'm having trouble understanding the overall scope of this role. Was it in a call center? We want to make sure that the reader really understands where you were doing this work and what the work was that you were doing. You were recognized for exceptional customer service leadership. So how were you recognized? Did you win an award? How much did you decrease dissatisfaction? How much did you boost retention of customers through the complaint process? So you retained more than 15%. What was it before you did your work? I would probably aim more to emphasize the retention rate and an increase in satisfaction rather than a decrease in dissatisfaction. Decrease in dissatisfaction is just like, okay, so we have to almost shift our thinking. Okay, so a decrease in unhappy customers. So it's almost like a double negative in a sense. It's not, but it's just like we have to kind of think it through a bit. Whereas if you just reframed it to increase in satisfied customers, then that would resonate quickly. Let's see here. And you manage workflows to ensure agent availability. Sorry, I'm just checking my note. So how did you manage agent workflow? And also going back to the customer satisfaction, what data, because we're going back, we want to make this make sense to an operations analyst direction. What data did you use to uncover solutions? So that's going to be very important as well. Then here we've got a 10-year long role, but no information. So I'm not sure why we don't have any information here. I would recommend adding the information. 10 years is a lot of years, and it would be great to know that part of your story. So make sure you add that in. And education, just wanted to ask, do you have any professional development that you can add in there? If not, no problem, just throwing that out there. Okay, whew. All right, guys. What questions do you have? Let me know. I'm surprised that was only 15 minutes overtime. So please let me know what questions that you have. I will stick around for a few more minutes because there is a bit of a delay with getting the chat over to StreamYard. So I will just take a moment to close down all my resumes. Thank you very much to everybody who volunteered your resumes. I appreciate it so much. This really helps other professionals and other job seekers with learning as well as optimizing their own resumes. So it's very, very helpful. Thank you all. Thank you, LinkedIn user. Thank you very much. Sorry, StreamYard doesn't let me see who you are. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for your kind words. Thank you, Bernard. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, so much. I really hope that you found this helpful. And And again, thank you so much for everybody who volunteered their resumes. Thank you so much, Jayesh, for your kind words as well. Thank you, LinkedIn user. Sorry, I hope that's not offensive for anyone. Oh, dear. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much, Wendy. Appreciated. Fantastic. Thanks so much, everyone. So I don't think there's any questions, but if there are, you can certainly enter them into the comments later or into the comments on the YouTube. Oh, Jesh, saved by the bell. Okay. My last question is about how to highlight scientific achievements without getting technical. Okay. So that's a really good question. So it really depends. I think it really starts with, so who am I writing for? So I'm writing for my potentially future employer. What does my future employer do? Like, are they building products? Are they building technology? Are they building solutions for clients? So identify that. And then think about, okay, if I were to step into my target role, what needs would I be filling? So once you've got that solidified, then you can make the call whether or not you actually need to talk about your scientific achievements. If you assess that you do, that yes, if I talk about my scientific achievements, this will add value to my application and this will help the employer see me in my target role. If we can say, yes, that's true, then we can share what I would recommend you do is share the scientific achievement in as brief a sentence as possible, and then add some elements or some context for how that makes sense in your target employer's world. So if you achieved a certain thing through your scientific research work, and then I would say I achieved this, whatever it was, through whatever research or through whatever project, and then add after that what it would enable, what that scientific achievement would enable for either your target employer or just for companies and or organizations at large. So it's great to achieve or discover these new findings, but what does it mean in the grand scheme of things? So to avoid getting overly technical, keep it brief, and then add on the end of it what it means in the world, what it means to the world of your profession, your specialty, and to your future employer. That's really the key, I would say. Hope that helps. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining me tonight. Really appreciate it. Glad you found this helpful. And yes, you can catch me in the comments if you have any questions, in the comments on LinkedIn or in the comments on YouTube. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.